So, welcome back to our series. This is episode 1, and today we're going to be talking about what hoarding and cluttering is, just kind of from a basic standpoint. And today we have joining us Chia-Ying, who leads the San Francisco Center for Compassion Focused Therapy. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray. Yeah, so I know that you prepare a few questions for me. Would you like to get started with that?
Yeah, that sounds great. So for our first question, what do we mean when we say hoarding?
So I like to say that when we use the word hoarding, my way of looking at the word is that it's about difficulties letting things go. And in general terms, it can be difficulties letting physical items go. But you can also say hoarding is difficulties letting thoughts go, difficulties letting relationships go. And so hoarding itself as a word, it's describing a phenomenon of difficulties letting go. Yeah, and of course, in this context, we may be talking about a mental health condition. And in that context, what does hoarding, quote-unquote, hoarding disorder mean? And so in that specific context, when we talk about hoarding disorder as a diagnosis, that means the person has difficulties letting physical items go to the extent that there is a lot of things accumulating in their home, and to the extent this condition is making their life less functional than it could have been, and affecting their well-being or the well-being of their loved ones.
Yeah, so it really sounds like letting go is kind of the hallmark of hoarding, and right, that it causes some distress and some residual effects through kind of the accumulation of things.
Yes.
Yeah. And is there a difference between hoarding and cluttering?
Yes, that's a very good question. So when we talk about hoarding, we want to think about, it's almost like the word to me is kind of like linking with the reasons behind the behavior. So most times when we use the word hoarding, it's kind of like coming from the emotional difficulties of letting things go, such as feeling more attached to the items, or fear of making the wrong decisions, or just some need to feel a sense of control by holding on to things. And so when we use the word hoarding, it's kind of like we want to be thinking about the psychological part behind the behaviors, or even behind the physical items. But the word clutter means, to me, it means kind of like a physical consequences of hoarding. It refers to the physical situation and in the environment.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're saying that kind of cluttering comes as a result of hoarding. That hoarding is like the thoughts and the feelings and the reasons behind the behavior, and then cluttering is the things that we accumulate as a result of that.
Right. And that's an important distinction, because a lot of times people can have clutter, but they don't have hoarding challenges. And there are so many different other reasons that can cause clutter. For instance, one may be having some like brain injuries or severe physical issues, and they cannot get around to organize things, so things just pile up. That's one common reason why people have clutter without hoarding issues. And other times people can be also very depressed, and so depressed they just feel like they have no motivation to do anything, even though if somebody comes in and do it for them, they probably will be like, okay, just do it. Yeah, they wouldn't have difficulties if things are not in their environment. Yeah, and there's a lot of overlapping or gray area in all these terms. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And thank you for making that distinction, right? Also kind of inviting the variations that pop up in between. And so for our next question, who is affected by hoarding?
Yeah, so this hoarding as a kind of like a mental health condition is itself getting attention is still a very new thing. So I must, before I report the data that the research has accumulated now I also need to say that it's still kind of like in a very early stage of scientists looking into the data. And so for now, what we know, most of the data come from Europe and America. And so from the studies that's done in these two continents, we would say hoarding affects about between 2 to 6% of the population. And so far, there really isn't much evidence to say whether men or women are more likely to experience hoarding. So far, the research says that it's insignificantly different. So meaning they're equally likely to experience this condition. And sometimes I get people ask me, is hoarding specifically an American thing, or is it a white people thing, or is it more about like people who are have less income, or like a social status related, or cultural ethnicical background? And so far, there's really no difference across the board. Yeah. But we may know something different in a few years. Maybe research will continue to develop and that will change.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you point out that you get these questions like, is this a US specific kind of mental health challenge? But to really recognize that your research really is kind of located between the US and Europe right now. And so kind of our data is centrally located here where we are in the US, but that's not to say, right, that this is a global experience, and to really advocate for that kind of expanded research to other populations.
Yeah, we still are kind of like in the infancy of hoarding research. So, but over the past few years, I'm seeing a lot of growth of the numbers of research coming out and the variety of topics. So it's really encouraging.
Yeah, that's so wonderful to hear. And what are some of the reasons that people experience hoarding?
Yeah, so there are really multiple reasons. There are genetic contribution to this mental health issues. So there is also early environment issues that a lot of people with hoarding diagnosis report, such as not having enough familial warmth, such as early childhood adversities, or even trauma or abuse. And people also have been looking into the executive functioning and such as short-term memory, visual memory, that kind of thing. And all of these things are playing a role in people's hoarding behaviors. And we see that a lot of people started to experience this issue since childhood. And some people started this issue kind of like later in their life, usually after some traumatic incidents happened. Yeah, so there may be some kind of different profiles in terms of which kind of factors contributed more to whom. Yeah, so but generally these like the genetic, the neuropsychological, the environmental difficulties are the things that have been showing in research so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and love that you include kind of the umbrella experience, that it's not one path, it seems like, that kind of leads to hoarding and cluttering challenges, but that it could be so many, which seems so true, right, to kind of the human experience.
Yeah.
And we have just one more question for today. If any of this information is resonating with folks, what resources are available to them?
Yeah, that's a very important question. So far, there are the current standard of treatment for hoarding is cognitive behavior therapy. So there are therapist-led groups therapy for CBT for hoarding, and there is also a peer-led kind of protocol called buried and treasure groups. And I imagine that if you just Google on the internet, especially if you live in America, you may be able to find a local group that will be easier for you to access if you would like to have some in-person support. And the way to find therapists is you can go on the International OCD's website, International OCD Foundation's website, and they have a section for hoarding. And they underneath that section, you can type in your zip code, and they can have some potential referral for people, for therapists that are specializing in hoarding for you. Yeah, and in our practice, we are doing research on compassion-focused therapy for hoarding as an alternative treatment. And so far, we have got very positive outcome, and we, in a couple of years ago, also published a finding on the preliminary data or pilot study on compassion-focused therapies efficacy for hoarding. And in our group, we also offer online group therapy using CFT, and we also do cognitive behavioral therapy. So these are the resources in terms of therapy. And and there are some like more peer-based or 12-step kind of group, and so those are also available, and it's a Google search away.
Yeah, sounds like there are quite a few resources available, and we'll definitely link those down below for you to click on and to reference. And you can also visit our website at sfcompassion.com. Chia-Ying also has a 20-week series on her YouTube channel for self-compassion for hoarding. So if you are international and there aren't a lot of resources maybe that we didn't mention, that is certainly one that you can access. And we really invite you to comment, to like, and to reach out and be a part of this community with us.
Thank you very much. Yeah, let us know if you have any questions, make comments, and we'll try our best to answer in a timely manner.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for giving us your time and your wisdom today, for inviting this compassion in this moment. And we hope that everyone listening will join us next time as we continue this series.
Great. Thank you.